So, back in 2004, I was asked to come and meet the film director Zack Snyder and a couple of producers from Warner for a project called 300. They were looking for a production designer, someone to design the look of a film about the 300 Spartans. You heard about these guys, right? Yeah, okay, cool. So I have a Greek name, I have Greek roots, which I'm very proud of, and I'm fascinated with Greek history, Spartan warriors and the battle they fought in. So you can imagine how excited I was. I immediately put a presentation together, books, illustration, photos, even sculptures. This movie had to be mine. I was the perfect designer for it. I went on strong to this meeting, almost like a Spartan. I stepped in, I was introduced, and quickly started to talk about my ideas. I went on for a good 20 minutes, talking about my vision for the project, my passion for the subject, my take on it. I talked and I talked. I could see the producers in the background reacting well to my words. I could see them nodding, the signs of approval. I was doing great. So I thought, because looking at the director, I could see no reaction, no movement. He stayed quiet and silent. My pitch over, Zack Snyder grabbed a book that was sitting next to him and said, "Patrick, I am not doing the historical account of this story. I'm making this movie, showing me the pages of this amazing comic book, 300 from Frank Miller." At this moment, I knew I had messed up. I was not going to get that job, a job I really wanted. So what did I do wrong? I had good credentials, I was passionate, showed strong interest in the project. It took me a while, but one day it came to me. I never gave a chance for the director to express his idea and his vision about his film. I was too caught up with my own vision of the film, and I talked about it. One thing I never did was to listen to that director. That day, my life changed forever. Not only I had to rethink of the way I would engage in my job as a production designer, but also the way I would engage in life. So, what is a production designer? Production designer is someone in charge of creating the look of the world the story is set in for a film. In close collaboration with the director, costume designer, and director of photography, the production designer will establish the design philosophy that drives the whole aesthetic of the film. There is many ways to design a film. Each designer will have his or her own way that works for them. So in no sense do I suggest that what I'm going to talk to you about today is the only way to design a film. What has worked for me in the last 35 years, what gave me great satisfaction and reward, I want to share with you today. So, I believe there are 4 key stages on designing for a film, and they are listen, feel, think, and create. Let's start with listen. Often, when a designer is getting a movie to design, the studio will send a script. The script is the Bible of the film. The story, the dialogue, it's all there. But a script is subject to the interpretation of the reader, the same way a book would be. And in the case of filmmaking, the interpretation has to come from the director. It is their film, it has to be their vision. So whenever possible, the designer should first meet the director before reading the script. This is the best way to get on the director's vision. The designer has to be almost like the director's first audience, listening to these words, listening how they are said, feeling the passion, the emotion. They have to be like a sponge, grabbing onto anything that's given to them on that very brief meeting, because this is probably the only time that you'll get a clean, unspoiled vision of the director. They must grab onto it. A few years later, I got called once again in a meeting with Zack Snyder. This time, I would not make the same mistake. So I sat down and I listened. I had learned my lesson. Zack engaged in a conversation and says, "Patrick, I'm making a film called Batman versus Superman, and for this movie, I need a brand new Batman." So I said, "This is great, so who's your Batman?" And he said, "My Batman is older, strong, but broken and in pain." So these were just a few words, but they were his first words, and they were key to his vision of Batman, and they fueled my imagination. So, the meeting over, I went straight to a small coffee shop outside the studio and just started to doodle. This is when phase 2 starts. This is what I call feel. Doodles, like these ones, are those little sketches we do in the corner of a page. You know, on the corner of a page while we're reading on the phone when we're bored. We've all done them. They come straight out. We don't think about them. They seem insignificant, but they are coming directly from my soul. They come straight from a place I call our inner bank of data. A place in the corner of our mind where our past memories, ideas, images that create our dreams come from. In any moment, those images can surface. This bank of data is not the privilege of the artist. It's in with all of us and can surface at any moment. David Lynch talks about this very well when he says, ideas are like fish. They swim around, we don't know where they come from, and once in a while, one comes to the surface. So, the meeting over, I went straight to a small coffee shop outside the studio and just started to doodle. Still inspired by the words of Zack Snyder, I started to doodle along. I had no idea what was going to come out. I just doodle, and let my mind open. I kept my insight, I'd let my spirit come out, and I just started to doodle along. Trusting my hand, I would not use an eraser. I kept doodling until I am not actually using an eraser because I want to keep all those little doodle, the little stroke lines that may feel like mistakes, because I know they might become assets later. So as I'm sketching, doodling, I don't see anything, but then, slowly, in the middle of that page, I see that form, that shape. I keep on doodling. I see that form that will look like the shape that will become the design approach for the rest of the movie. I see the form, I see the idea, I catch it like a fish. From this doodle here, the design is born. That, from the few words from the director, that idea, that vision, with that little doodle, I'm now connected to it. This is probably the most exciting part of the design, as I refine the shape, develop the design. I don't want to bring on details yet, because it is too soon. The design must remain bold, the shape must be bold. The idea needs to be pure, but far from perfect at this stage. It's just the beginning, it's just a sketch. It is far from being perfect. And talking about perfection, Salvatore Dali once said something, have no fear of perfection. You'll never reach it. That perfection we all strive for can be detrimental to our creative process. I think we can all relate to that. In our daily life, we often wanted to make it perfect from the get-go. At the gym, at work, in our relationship, we build a wall of fear and doubt that stop us from moving ahead. So, seeking perfection too soon can be detrimental. In my world, it's kind of the same. It's not that different. Whenever I get a movie to start designing, I stay loose. I don't want to bring on details too soon. There's something else that's actually a problem when you start designing, is what I call confusion. Confusion happens when looking at too many images while starting to draw. So an example, back in the early stage of my career, I was still just a baby in this industry. I got offered to design Godzilla. I was excited, very, very pumped and very honored, but I quickly felt very scared because I thought Godzilla is a very famous creature. It's an iconic monster. How can I do an original creature that the audience will react well to? How did the other Godzilla look like? What should my Godzilla look like? With all those questions, I felt I needed to get research and reference. I immediately collected thousands of images of the reptiles, lizards, snakes, and I just laid them down in front of me. What I ended up creating that day is what I call a design patchwork. A design patchwork happens when drawing while checking out too many ideas and images. You start using every bit and pieces from each one of those images. You are getting confused by the image you're looking at. That day, I was confused by all those images, and I ended up drawing with no sensibility, no originality. I created a design that was bold, but with no originality, no sense of creativity. That day, I had to put all these ideas aside, put all the research aside, all the elements that I collected, throw them out, and only then was I able to do Godzilla, the creature. So, it is very important to trust our instinct. Inspiration has been in our life all around forever, and I've been collecting these ideas. Our inner bank of data, our mind has collected all this information, and it's ready to give it to us at any time. So we should not try to inspire ourselves just before we engage in any action. At this stage, it would be too late, and only create doubt and confusion. So, back to the Batman story. At the cafe shop, I have my drawing now. I've got my ID, and I'm ready to show it to the director. I am excited, but I'm also a little fearful, because I don't know how he's going to react. This is just a small drawing, after all. So I pay for my coffee, take my napkins, and take off. Go to the studio and say, Zach, listen, it's been just an hour, but I want to show you something that you may be interested in. It is interesting to say that us designers, when we meet with the director, we end up going back on our place at work for like a couple of days or a week to put a presentation together. So when I called Zack Snyder barely 2 hours after our first meeting, and I said, Zach, I have something I want to show you, he was surprised. So I grabbed everything, and rushed back to the studio. I got to his office, and I dropped this little piece of napkin on his desk, and he looked at it and said, Patrick, I love it. You got the job. So that small little drawing ended up being the perfect expression of our new creative collaboration. And this is when stage 3 starts. Think. At this stage, the designer needs to keep the essence of that very rough sketches, but needs to build on it with a team. With my team, I try to introduce them with the same drawing I introduced to the director. I want my team to want to participate, be a part of it, become part of the adventure, creative adventure. I don't want to lock them into a final design, something that's finished and drawn completely, because it would defy the point. These artists want to collaborate, and they want to bring a little bit of themselves in that design, and I need to give them the opportunity to do so. So, introducing my team with a small drawing like this is like saying, hey, this is the map, let's together figure out the best way to our destination. What we're aiming for in this design is a universal design, a design that appeals to a broader range of people. A universal design is created by the collaboration of many artists from different origins, different experience, joining in together as an art community. That art community, the designer needs to allow this art community and this community of artists to bring on their own expertise and sensibility that will allow the designer to actually create a more universal design. The community is the intelligence of the group. So the designer should never be protective of his design. He should collaborate, communicate with his team. He should always be egoless. He should always guide the team toward the final direction, but never micromanage the artist. These people will always take that design, that rough design, and push it further if they're given the opportunity to do so. So, a couple of months later of work with the art department and the designer, I've created what we call an art presentation. Using traditional technique, but also modern softwares, high-tech software, that presentation should include all the display of the design of the film, but also beautiful illustration representing key moments of the movie. The director and the designer are now ready to introduce their vision to the studios. the time for the little quick sketches and doodle is over. It is time to make a movie. We are now entering the final phase, which I call create. When that presentation is approved by the studios, and the whole visual aspect of the film is approved by the studio, a community of new artists will step in. They are constructors, builders, fabricators, and they are going to bring life into this design by building them. The designer needs to lead them toward the visual goal, but should trust their expertise, their knowledge of the technology, because they know it better than he ever will. When it's all built and put together and ready to go, comes the filming crew. With them, all those creations are now in their hands. They are going to bring yet more life into those creations by filming them with actors, special camera angles in the story context, lighting, and editing, and sometimes visual effects, bringing one more time life into those designs. So when you look at this, although the designer's job may sound of importance, it is only one small step in the process of making a film. It's one step in the long creative road of making a movie. Because at the end of the day, this is just about the movie. The final product will be a movie. It's never just about the design or the artwork. A production designer should always serve the story and the script and the director. So, a beautiful design that doesn't serve the story is a failure in the filmmaking. So for me, it always starts as an emotional process, goes on to be a collaborative, creative adventure. It is a little bit like giving birth to a baby and having somebody else raise that baby. You are creating an idea, a design, and give it to somebody else to give it a life and a story. All the years in this industry, what I've figured out is that my interest into the film design has always been more about the emotional and sensorial aspect of it, rather than its science and technology. And because of that, all this experience have shaped me not only into the designer that I am today, but also the man that I have become. All this lesson that I have learned, have built my confidence in life, also taught me to always listen first. To always listen first and never be afraid to make the first step. Also trust myself and accept imperfection and always accept ideas and concepts from other artists. So, if you are designing a film, a story, or life, you can use these four words, which are, listen, feel, think, and create. Thank you.